Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody who's joining us live today. If you're here for another episode of Magento's Digital Experience webinar, you are in the right place. Today we are joined by Nosto, and we're going to be covering online merchandising in the age of personalization. Just a couple of housekeeping items before I hand things over to Rory at Nosto. You are joining in listen-only mode, which means you're going to be on mute. You do have the ability to raise your hand and ask questions through that GoToWebinar control panel. So feel free to do so throughout the webinar. I'm estimating that we have about 35 minutes of content for you, and then we're going to save about 10 minutes at the end for that open Q&A. So you have a while to get those questions in, and then you'll have another opportunity at the end for us to address those before signing off. This is, I think, our 12th episode of the Digital Experience webinar series. And again, we are honored to be joined by Rory Gilmore, who's Head of Customer Experience at Nosto, and Bianca Yang, who is VP of E-Commerce at St. John Knits. Rory, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to you.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone who's tuning in. My name is Rory Gilmore, and I'm Head of Customer Experience for the UK and Ireland market here at Nosto. And I've got with me today Bianca Yang, who is VP of E-Commerce at St. John Knits, who's been a long-standing, extraordinary partner of Nosto's over the years. And yeah, so thanks for joining us, Bianca. Yeah, so we're just gonna jump in now, and I'll make a start on our content. So we've got a bit of an agenda for you guys today that we're going to run through. First off, we're going to start with a short introduction of what we mean when we say personalization in e-commerce. We'll cover merchandising and how it's evolved, sort of with the rise of e-commerce and digitalization of shopping. And then we're going to discuss sort of our view at Nosto on how online merchandising can and should be informed by personalization and vice versa. Finally, we're then going to run through St. John Knits online merchandising and personalization strategies and how they reflect our view of how the two should be deployed in a sort of harmonious manner. And then at the end, we're going to finish up with a bit of Q&A. So yeah, thanks again for joining, and we'll get stuck in. So personalization obviously is a bit of a buzzword. It's been around for over a decade. Google does it, Netflix does it, Amazon does it. So why don't all e-commerce brands do exactly what these titans of industry do? Well, the answer is we can, but it takes a unique strategy to truly sort of rise above the noise and stand out. E-commerce brands have a long list of industry-specific challenges that they need to solve that search engine personalization can't, basically. So this includes having a distinct bunch of goals, such as cross-selling and upselling, because simply offering customers products that their browsing behavior suggests they want isn't going to cut it anymore. We need to go a bit deeper than that. So let's take a step back and firstly kind of define personalization really quickly. So according to Forrester, personalization is using customer data and understanding to frame, guide, extend, and enhance interactions based on that person's history, preferences, context, and intent. So naturally, personalized search and browsing experiences are definitely trying to achieve some of these goals, and the leaders in the space definitely do this really, really well. But in e-commerce, a personalized experience is so much more than just the right product recommendation at the right time. In search and browsing experiences, the individual always has a clear and active intention when they're on your site. So they're looking for something without needing to be prompted. In e-commerce, shoppers are not often actively looking for anything. They often browse sites and catalogs just solely to browse. So they're even often they're experiencing brands while they aren't necessarily looking to interact with them at all in that moment. This is a really important thing to kind of remember as we're working through the content today. So reframing this, putting it back towards e-commerce, what is e-commerce personalization? Well, e-commerce personalization can include visuals and messaging that speak specifically to a shopper and their behavior and the way they've behaved on that brand's website. It can be offers and recommendations that are specific to a shopper's demographic or their location or intention. It can be emails or advertisements specifically targeted to a shopper to convince them to come to the site and to get involved with your brand and hear your story. So of course, e-commerce personalization isn't just this kind of curated messaging and visuals in different places. It's also consistency and cohesion across experiences and across devices. So shoppers often browse on their mobile device and then they come back to the store on their desktop to purchase. And having their cart remain consistent across those experiences is an example of personalization. And it can often mean the difference between a sale and a bounce if you're linking those two experiences together. So e-commerce is, it's a two-sided road where offers, discounts, and inventory are always changing, just like the preferences of the customer. And this means that e-commerce personalization must be in real time. So to make these truly valuable, truly unique shopping experiences, it's really essential that these personalization efforts are happening in this real-time way. It can't be updated in batches, for example, like how Google search results are. So e-commerce personalization looks like curated experiences that remain seamless across channels, devices, and lifecycle touchpoints for your customers. So we're going to step back now and we're going to have a look at merchandising. Merchandising is obviously something that all retailers are familiar with. Merchandisers across all businesses, whether you're selling fruit and veg or luxury items like St. John knits, there's numerous responsibilities and tasks that are kind of put upon merchandisers. So that can be supply chain decisions, it can be margin management, it can be brand relations, it can be monitoring inventory, it can be sell-through, it can be everything here, there, and in between. So as you can see, this touches virtually every aspect of an e-commerce operation. And in a lot of ways, merchandising is actually all about the relationship between the customer behavior and the background operations and the goals of you guys as a brand. So visual merchandising, to get a little bit more granular, it has been like a primary subset of this discipline since the rise of the department store across Japan, France, the United States, where basically these retailers are looking to find a way to get their shoppers buying the products that best achieve their unique goals. So e-commerce merchandising is an evolution of this specific trade. It's historically been something that's quite difficult to do, in that online merchandisers are basically in charge of achieving the goals of every merchandising subset through, intuitive product placement and arrangement, variation in product visuals, relevant and informative messaging, and seamless browsing experience. So I bet you're kind of asking yourself now or thinking, well, has or is personalization completely replacing the role of merchandising? Because all the things I've just listed sound like things that personalization deals with. The simple answer is no. And this is something that we try and instill in people, is that personalization and merchandising, while they may sound similar in what they deal with, the truth is that they're actually trying to accomplish two very different goals. Merchandising is the practice of showcasing what the store wants to sell. So your drivers, your sort of initiatives as a retailer, whereas personalization is the practice of showcasing what the shopper wants to buy. So it's two very different things that we're trying to answer with these two different definitions. So this difference in intention is key when navigating how merchandising and personalization are different. It's also key in understanding how they can be used together to improve each other's performance according to your specific business goals. So personalization rules will typically include things like behavioral relevance, a customer's location, their affinity with certain brands or categories, their demographic, and more. Whereas merchandising goals often include things such as increased sales, higher profitability, they can speak to brand relations, they can speak to inventory, or even seasonality. So an example of personalization in action is the fact that kids' cereals sugary kids cereals are placed on lower shelves for them to see at their height. Whereas an example of merchandising would be the fact that the supermarket's own brand or their proprietary brand of kids cereal is placed in the most prominent spots on those shelves because it's of high margin compared to other kids cereal brands. So in this instance, it's a crude instance from the supermarket, for example, but by combining personalization and merchandising in this way, supermarkets are actually able to ensure that kids are shown their favorite cereals, whilst also making sure that the kids' focus is mostly directed towards their proprietary or their own brand cereal, because ultimately the supermarket wants to sell you those because they have a higher rate of profitability. So hopefully that puts things into a little bit more context. So where in e-commerce, coming out of the supermarket for 5 minutes, where in e-commerce do these two worlds often clash or compete? Merchandising and personalization both touch most parts of a brand's sort of site. So the homepage, the product pages, the cart pages, and this holds especially true on category pages, which happen to drive up to 70% of retailers' online revenue on average. So category pages are your aisles in the supermarket. They're helping shoppers zero in on which product they would like to purchase when they're still in their discovery phase. In other words, this is prime real estate for retailers to drive shoppers towards the products and brands that the retailer wants the customer to purchase. So which one should take precedent? You've got both available. You've got a solution that can provide this. Which one should we focus on? Well, at Nosto, our view is that neither should ever take precedent over the other. Instead, both should inform and strengthen each other. So when used in harmony, the two practices can actually really empower retailers to create these highly relevant shopping experiences that accomplish their unique commercial goals while still considering the needs and wants of the customer. So for example, if a merchandiser is able to combine product data and customer behavioral data, along with their kind of anecdotal know-how, and then they can action on it immediately, they're able to accomplish much more than if they only have one or two pieces of the full puzzle. So for example, in this slide here, if Zoe is shopping for a beach weekend and she places a bikini and some sunglasses and some sun cream and sandals into the cart, and then she proceeds to the hat category page, then promoting hats with high margins will help drive the retailer's profit up. Whereas if Zach, who is going on a weekend hiking trip, places boots and a backpack and bug spray and a flannel shirt in his cart, then promoting socks with high conversion rates would drive him to more easily purchase those socks. So we're leveraging the customer data to predict shopper intention. And by doing this, merchandisers can use personalization within their set merchandising rules to better leverage on-site experiences such as category pages to drive these desired goals. So what does this combination of personalization and merchandising rules look like in action? It can be any number of things. It can be seasonal sales or relevant offers that you show on your homepage. It can be dynamic bundles on your product detail page, or even goal-oriented sequencing on your category pages. So from different product recommendation goals to timely triggers of pop-ups meant to support your relationship with a given brand, merchandising rules, along with personalization, can be used to drive a myriad of high-performing, relevant shopping experiences for your customers. So what does personalized merchandising actually look like? To discuss personalization and merchandising strategies coexisting, we've brought in a mutual client of ours and Magento's, Bianca Yang of St. John Knits. Hey Bianca, hopefully you can hear me. And can you start by telling us a little bit about St. John Knits?
Hello, can you hear me, Rory?
I've got you. Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, great. Yeah, we are very high-end women apparel fashion, brands that are famous for knit-well jackets and dresses particularly. And that's our products.
Great. Thank you for the intel. So how big of a role does sort of merchandising play in how you organize your online store and how you sort of run your days over at St. John Knits?
Oh, very big. Although we used both merchandising and personalization, but I mean, for a luxury women's fashion apparel brand like us, making sure that our day-to-day merchandising actually incorporates the brand guideline and integrate how our director of the design sees the product and the brand should be presented in the way that we wanted to present to the audience is very important for us.
Mm. So you've got a fine balance to strike between that sort of the guiding and the merchandising, I guess. So how does the team over there view personalization in regards to merchandising with that in mind?
So obviously we do a lot in both areas, but we're basically use both merchandising and personalization across the site, but prioritize either merchandising or personalization in different areas. So for example, we definitely prioritize merchandising on the homepage, category page, usually are those pages that we wanted to focus on storytelling about our brand, about the products, about the collections of this upcoming season or the existing, new arrival. On those detailed product page and those highly personalized pages such as shopping cart page, other checkout pages, we're definitely prioritizing personalization. And we found this is a fairly good combination for us to maximize the sales opportunities.
Mm. That's great. It's really, really useful insight. And so are there instances where personalization has kind of trumped a merchandising strategy? And if so, where are they? And what are they?
Usually it happens on the product detail page, I'd say. So if we look at the whole site, website, real estate, from the home page to the last checkout page, product detail page is something sits in the middle, like the boundary of the it's the last step of overall general personal merchandisation versus the beginning of the personalization. So one thing that I would like to mention is last year we had a sort of like matching piece recommendation, which used to be handled by manual recommendation through merchandising rules by the team. But starting from actually Q4 of the last year, we used the Nostro bundle recommendation, which is automatic recommendation. Depending on the rules we set up in the bundle functionality that significantly helped the team to improve the productivity, but also actually increased the sales a lot because we know our customers are looking for the matching pieces. Meaning if they buy jackets from us, they constantly call customer service asking for, hey, where is the matching piece of the dress, with the same fabric, with the same pattern. Before we have to set up the like matching piece recommendation one by one for each detailed page. So all we can do is only focusing on those, top sellers and or those, products that we wanted to focus for this season versus right now we can actually apply at once to all products as long as we set up rules in Nostro. So that actually helps them a lot.
Great. That's definitely something that we're seeing more of our retailers adopting at this time. That kind of balance between the curation of products and the bundling and the algorithmic approach to the combining products. So you actually mentioned that your category pages as well earlier on were especially important property for you guys when you're making visual merchandising decisions. So
Right.
what exactly does your category page merchandising strategy currently look like? Do the brand's kind of commercial goals overshadow personalization on those important pages? Maybe you could speak to us a little bit about that aspect.
Yeah, I've been actually seeking for a good way to achieve the balance between the merchandising and personalization. At this point, we are definitely prioritizing merchandising over personalization because we're following what we call the storytelling principle for the category pages, depending on the theme of this category. If it's the theme of fabric like satin and the sequin, we'll work with merchandising and marketing team to decide if we wanted to actually highlight a certain pattern of sequin or we wanted to highlight a certain color tone, particularly for this season. These are very kind of like, subjective manual, really depending on the design concept. So we're now today definitely prioritizing merchandising. However, on the e-com side, starting from this year, we have planned to achieve better personalization or at least a better combination of the merchandising and the personalization that we're planning to show the widget of the personalization not basing on customers' individual behavior, but basing on the behavior pattern of a cluster or a cohort of a customer of website behavior. So we're trying to play this around a little bit to see if we can continuously maximizing the sales opportunity through the category page.
Yeah, and I guess historically you guys have so much anecdotal knowledge of your designs and your collection, and you're really close to the product, and you know it probably better than a computer does. So it's really important that you're kind of manually merchandising these category pages based on that
Right.
requirement at the moment. And how many kind of hours work do you estimate that sort of going through that manual process of merchandising takes at the moment?
Oh, right now, at least 1 to 2 hours per day, and that's why I'm pushing better personalization on category page because I'm hoping to actually continuously improve the productivity in this area while maximizing the sales.
Yeah, yeah. It's quite a lot of time, actually. When I used to work as a retailer, it was one of the main things that I used to do, kind of day in, day out, sitting with our creative director and
Yeah.
dragging things around, So, so I
Always.
remember that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's never black and white, even if you push 100% personalization, you would always want to know. And sales actually need does exist. I mean, design or merchandising team will also approach to you asking, hey, can we push this product? In those scenarios, you can't just say, oh, we're doing 100% personalization. We can't. So a certain balance always have to be achieved.
yeah, understood. Yeah, it's a tough balance to strike. So if you let's say you have more complex capabilities, such as being able to give different weight to different merchandising rules. Let's say, for example, you've got 30% higher margin items on the list, or something like that on top of your personalization. How would that kind of functionality change your strategy overall? Would that maybe cater to that instance that you just suggested?
Oh yeah, we will always welcome more choices so that we can run tons of tests to help us achieve that optimal point. I mean, it's it's we want to we I feel like we will never be able to say okay, 30% actually basing on the high margin, 50% basing on the high conversion is the best choice for us. This to me is an endless actually A/B test process.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I definitely welcome that actually choice.
Yeah, I think it's again, I sound like I'm repeating myself, but that balance to strike is always difficult between conversion and your kind of individual goals as a business. So yeah. So let's move on to your product recommendation strategy. I know we sort of touched on this a little bit earlier, but if you could just give me a bit of an overview, where does your team currently deploy these product recommendations?
We do, frequently bought together, and the customers also viewed together. These are the two widgets, um, other than the bundle widgets that we put together on the product detailed page. And these two widgets, we've done a different A/B test, and so far these two widgets, based on the logic we set it up there, outperformed everything else. So we decided to keep these two widgets. Frequently together is based on purely customers actually personalized history. Um, but customer also viewed is actually we currently chose to have it based on the behavioral of a cohort of a customer, meaning the customer shows the same actually browsing and shopping pattern with the customer currently looking at this product detail page. With looking at the test result, these two, these two logics that we currently adopt for these two widgets perform the best.
Great. And can you talk a little bit as well about how your team decides sort of which rules to implement for these two settings? Like how did you decide that these were the ones that you were gonna roll out on each page? Was it mainly through the test or?
Yes, it mainly through the A/B test.
Okay, great. Cool. So finally, I just wanted to touch on the dynamic bundles, which you mentioned earlier as well. And obviously, St. John Knits deploys this strategy on some of its product detail pages, kind of on and off. And at Nosto, we think of this strategy as similar to retail merchandising tactic of almost like dressing a mannequin in a store and organizing the look. You know, you've got the trousers and the jacket on the hanger next to each other, so it's easy to access. So what are you currently doing online to try and replicate this experience, particularly with dynamic bundles? And what types of rules are you using for them at the moment?
This is the area that I think when merchandising meets personalization perfectly. So the recommendations of these styled with, or what we call the bundle recommendation, is based on this like very subjective designer's opinion regarding to, oh, this piece matches that piece. We recommend this piece is put together with that piece, and especially for those best sellers, we like closely work with merchandising team to decide, are you guys okay, or would you recommend this piece goes with that piece? The areas that we are indeed adopting personalization or a semi kind of like automated recommendation is when after we designed the main piece, we wanted to also recommend the accessory piece. The accessory recommendation you're seeing today in this area is actually automatically picked based on the Nosto's rules. So we're kind of like use the combination of the subjective merchandising and the automated personalization.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite examples actually to give, because I think that the dynamic bundles is like the perfect marriage of those two aspects. Like you guys know that you want to cross sell with this nice jacket. You want to sell a dress and a accessory, in this case, some jewelry that goes with it nicely. And obviously letting the algorithm dictate based on your customer behavior which product it should render in those two positions is like the perfect pairing of those two kind of aspects. It's your unique goals as a business, but it's also based on the customers, so you're not missing out on potential great pairings of products together.
Yeah, totally. And also, if a customer end up buying another matching piece, essentially that matching piece different from our manual recommendation will appear in the widget of frequently bought together anyway.
Yeah.
And that widget to show the customer's options and choices, and using this widget to show designer or our merchandising recommendations.
Yeah, we've had that before as well, where customers have ended up, retailers have ended up sort of learning quite a lot about their collection. As you say, very subjective. You guys have an idea of what goes together. Then you find that actually you pair two categories together, and there's this other pair of trousers that goes really nicely with the jacket. And it's
Right.
maybe something that you didn't think to put together, but actually all the customers are saying these two things go together really nicely.
Right,
So
right.
it can be a learning experience as well, which is cool.
Yeah.
So how have they, just talking about the bundles as well, like how have the bundles kind of moved the needle in terms of those specific goals? I mean, presumably the objective here is to increase AOV, or the
Oh,
span of the collection that gets viewed. I'm just interested, what's been the impact on the bottom line?
oh, definitely. Bundle helps a lot in terms
Yeah.
of qualitative and quantitative analysis. What's actually, the original intention that we decided to go with this bundle recommendation is exactly actually initiated by the customer feedbacks that we received, and
Mm.
proposed by customer service team, because they're like, we constantly, like almost every day, receive customers call asking, hey, what is the other piece actually worded by the model in the image? I can't find it from your website. And so they're like, oh, you can find it from this page, and then they send the link, or they help customer to order over the phone, blah blah blah. But they're like, is there a way that instead of just showing that a single piece on the product detail page, can we also recommend the other piece weld by this model in the image, so that the customers can easily find the look? And actually, I can also tell you that another project we're working on this year is exactly because of the good performance of the bundle recommendation. We're now thinking to working on, instead of selling by piece, we also wanted to sell by look moving forward. We're
Yeah.
trying to identify a good layout to sell by look. We have shop's look page now, but we wanted to enhance a little bit. And so, highly possible, I think, starting from the second half of this year, customers would be able to shop by look, like the real look shopping experience based on the look, but not just based on the single piece. And this is purely, inspired by this bundle recommendation, what we learned from this widget.
Wow. So I mean, often we talk to merchants and we talk about how they can gather loads of information out of our segmentation and our insights that we have. But actually, a lot of the time, these these small tweaks and maybe just changing the recommendation type to being a bundle recommendation, this sort of merchandised recommendation,
Yeah.
can teach you guys a lot about maybe where your direction can go in terms of not only how you sell online, but also how you produce, and what areas of the collection you should focus on more, and maybe leave some that get less prominent and that kind of thing. So it's really satisfying for us to see as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. Cool. So just interested as well to learn a little bit more about some other instances of how your team think about merchandising on the site and how personalization has maybe affected these.
So starting from here, like shopping cart, checkout page, all customers are seeing are purely based on their personalized actually shopping behavior or pattern in the past. So we're this has been the rules that we decided to adopt, because also through the A/B test, it turns out outperform all the other rules. So here, if you shop from us, from the shopping cart page, and after the first checkout page, the second checkout, and the thank you page, like everything you're seeing, if it's the recommendation, it's based on your personalized behavior.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like this personalization layer has kind of changed the way that you merchandise, and definitely, as you were saying on the previous example with the dynamic bundles,
Very
it,
different. Very
it's
different.
really influenced it. Do you feel like it's kind of made you a better merchandiser yourself, or your team a better set of merchandisers?
They work very well. You know, I I I can say like personalized recommendation purely basing on customers' individual behavioral pattern. As long as you put them in the right place, the click-through rate and the conversion rate are the highest. The audience we're able to approach may not be the largest because at this point we are already talking about the conversion from the detailed product page to the shopping cart page, right? Which is usually the biggest drop, the overall conversion funnel. But here we're seeing actually the highest click-through rate and the conversion rate despite of the much smaller audience.
Well, so yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's definitely teaching you things and illuminating things that maybe you didn't expect, which is really cool.
Yes, definitely.
That's great. Thank you for that insight. It's super useful, and yeah, really, hopefully everyone's kind of found it useful to listen to. So we've got time for some Q&A now, I believe. So yeah, hopefully we've got some questions.
Great, perfect timing. So we do have a couple of questions that are already in the queue, and just to loop back to the beginning, for those of you on the phone, you do have the opportunity to send in questions. There is a question panel within your GoToWebinar dashboard. Go ahead and utilize that, and we are going to try to address as many as we possibly can. The first question for you is, can you explain a little further why someone would want to give weight to multiple merchandising rules at once instead of simply choosing a single rule? Wouldn't it be counterintuitive? Let me know if I need to repeat that, Rory.
No, I think I follow you. Starting with a nice, easy one there. No, I mean, it's a really good question, and I think at least from my side, you know, as we sort of touched on, if you're a retailer, you've got like 5 different goals that you need to shoot for. So you might have, you might be really needing to push your profitability, so you're sort of focused on margin. You also maybe want to sell through older stock or SKUs that are less popular or getting less prominence on the site. You maybe also want to make sure that you're weighting the relevancy. So as well as you have margin that you're trying to push. You've also got the sell-through number, the stock number, but then you've also got the personal relevancy. And so actually leveraging multiple rules at one time is going to help speak to those different things. And if a customer, for example, has more of a sensitivity to price, then we're going to look at that and we're going to leverage their customer behavior, and we're going to make sure that actually we're going to push maybe products that are slightly cheaper for this customer, whereas for someone who was less price sensitive, we would push the ones that we make a ton of margin on and we have a bunch of stock on, because we know that they're less price sensitive, so it's more important that we try and prioritize the things that we need them to buy. Does that make sense?
I think so. I'll let you know if there's any follow-up.
Yeah, please do.
And another just housekeeping item that I wanted to address is, if we aren't able to get to your question here today, since we do have quite a few coming in, we do have your contact information and we will be following up with you after. So go ahead and submit those, even if you think we might need to follow up later. So the next one up is, where is combining personalization and merchandising the most powerful? Where can I be most effective and why?
I mean, I can speak to that. I think Bianca's example from the presentation is great, with the leveraging of the dynamic bundles feature, for example, where you're using your merchandising rules combined with the algorithmic sort of learning of a data tool. So that's a really good use case. Also, I don't know if maybe this is something that you guys have considered as well, Bianca, but maybe where you're merchandising your categories and you have these rules, it might also be nice to have a personalization sort of area within those categories that's clearly signposted. Is this something that you guys have maybe tried to do, having like a personalized recommendation block within your categories?
On the category page, is that what you meant?
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
we had it before, but it didn't actually like 100% of personalization, like pure personalized recommendation on the category page didn't really give me the result that I would like to see. And
Mm,
my interpretation is it is the relevancy is not there. I think it's at least for our customers when they land on, let's say, a knitwear jacket page. And at the bottom of that page, when everything above is knitwear jacket, and at the bottom it's like a completely irrelevant pants recommendation based on her past, last purchase history. It's probably the it's probably too irrelevant to them, but at
mm.
least in terms of click-through rate and conversion rate, I didn't see the result. But we do plan to revamp the personalized recommendation category page because I think the opportunity is still there. It's just we haven't found the optimal point there. But I think we should continuously try.
Yeah, and another thing that that we sometimes say is a good thing to do. You know, you're talking about the bottom of your category page there.
Right?
Um, we sometimes will we have some merchants who have some good success where they have, if you've got to the bottom of the category listing, that's probably a good indication that you haven't found the thing that you want just yet. So oftentimes we will advise people, hey, at the bottom of the category listing, why not use like a browsing history related recommendation there and filter it by other categories. So based on the products that you have engaged with, here are some other things that you maybe haven't seen yet, based on your browsing history that you're potentially going to like. Because a lot of people use that space for a straight up browsing history,
Yeah.
which is good, but it's not necessarily the most innovative use of the technology that's available. So that can sometimes work quite nicely as well.
I agree. I
Yeah.
think we should try that too. Or another way that we've been thinking, we haven't done this yet, but we've been thinking is, like you said, if at the bottom of the page, customer still didn't find what she's interested in, we can
Mm,
recommend her, the new arrivals. If she hasn't got a chance to check some or new arrivals, or the newest season collections, stuff like those, we can do those type of recommendations.
yeah. And still have them personalized just with like a new in filter, for example. That would be
Yeah,
neat.
yeah.
Cool. Hopefully that answers the question.
Great. Moving on. What are some other detailed examples of how merchandising rules added on top of personalization is actually better than just personalization on its own?
Um, well, I mean, I think I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier in with the other question, but I think for me, when I was a retailer, one of the big things that I was really concerned about was sell through. You know, making sure that if there were slow moving products or there were slow moving SKUs or specific color sets within the collection, we were trying to get as much focus on those as possible to try and educate our customers into seeing them more frequently and hopefully aiding the conversion with them. So I think there was a retailer in the UK here who we've recently signed, actually, funnily enough, who ended up doing a test whereby they had this jacket that wasn't selling very well, and they put it into the first position on their like main jackets page, which is their most frequented page, and suddenly it became the bestseller. So it's like it's really important to not neglect the sort of impact that the listing can have on the way that your customers are shopping. Um, but certainly adding a merchandising rule around maybe stock inventory or margin, that's certainly going to help you as a business hit your goals, maybe more so than just showing Bianca the jacket that she's been browsing again and again, for example. Instead, showing ones that she's still going to like, but are going to be, that hopefully being merchandised correctly are going to we're going to start seeing more units of those going out the door. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Bianca, but that's my kind of idea. I don't know.
No, I share the same idea with you.
Yeah, cool. That's great.
Great. The next question we have from Chris is, what personalization best practices do you suggest for, and he's giving you an example of a toy company that doesn't have a lot of parent-child relationship type items?
Okay, so by parent-child, I presume we're just talking mainly about simple products. In which case, I mean, you're in quite an advantageous position if you're looking at sort of simple products, because in terms of your user functionality, it's much easier for you to get people to check out on those products because they don't have to choose a size, they don't have to choose a color, they don't have to choose these other things. So oftentimes when we're talking about trying to personalize for sort of anyone who's just making their first leap into this space, one of the key things that you can do is make better use of your of the information that's available. So look at your product pages, and you can set some very simple rules around products that are contained within the same category. So in your example, it might be wooden toys. So if I'm looking at a wooden train and you guys are selling within the same category of wooden toys, a wooden train track and a wooden train station and all of that kind of stuff, using a simple category filter that leverages all of your customer data to bring in product recommendations is going to be really, really key. But on top of that, outside of the complementary products from the same category, there's also going to be products from across the site that are maybe closely related to this that you want to bring into those product pages as well. So again, adding a simple rule which will allow a customer to see products from other categories that are closely related. You might have a train clock or something else that's kind of themed in the similar space that lots of other customers have been engaging with, and automating those kind of cross-sell and upsell rules like we saw in Bianca's example would be a really, really key place to start, and letting your customer data decide that instead of you guys having to go through and manually do that, at least, is a really good place to jump off from.
Great, thanks, Rory. We have a couple of questions asking around the integration and the management on the back end of this tool. So Rory, maybe you could talk a little bit about that and how much business or technical knowledge you need to execute on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's Magento, so you're going to need to install a module. And once that's done, maybe Bianca, you can talk about ease of use within Nosto. How easy or difficult have you found it to use day to day for your team?
It's well, once you install that extension, it's actually very easy to use. I have to admit that this is probably one of the easiest personalization engines that I've ever used. Like, not for advertising purpose, but it is too. Very easy to use, and that's why I like it a lot, because I can play it around a lot, and we run a lot of tests. In some areas, you may need a little bit, HTML coding experience, but I don't think it's the most critical part. To use the tool, it's very easy to get.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons, I mean, obviously I'm going to sound biased here, but one of the reasons I think Nosto is it's still around and it's sort of at the forefront of this sort of section of our industry is the usability aspect. It's very, very important to us that it's easy for people to make these changes on the fly. And once the implementation is complete, which by the way is extremely simple to do, making changes and checking them using our debug tool is instantaneous. You don't have to wait for deployments. You don't have to queue things up. You can see the rules that you're implementing as you go. It's very dynamic in that respect. And I think that's one of the reasons that that so many people actually end up choosing us for that very purpose, because we're not time rich in e-commerce. You know, it's the one thing that we don't have loads of, and we need to worry about selling products. And so hopefully Nosto makes that process a bit easier.
And also, client service is very supportive. There is a world-class client service.
That's very, very nice to say. Thank you. It makes it much easier when we're dealing with clients such as yourselves, I have to say.
So we just have time for about 1 or 2 more questions, Rory. And again, the rest we will follow up with individually. If someone's asking, who are you using to power the recommendations, if you wouldn't mind sharing?
Yeah, so it all comes from Nosto. So Nosto, when it's deployed, it sits on the site and it learns about all of your products and it tracks all of your customer interactions with your products, and it builds a massive, there's a crude way of putting it, but it's like a spidergram of all of your products and all of the customer interactions that happen with them, and we build a set of kind of recommendations, and we have an engine that you can leverage. So we're powering them ourselves, and it's based on the data that we capture on all of your customers, and they don't need to be logged in for us to capture that. Any behavior that anyone exhibits on the site goes into the pool of data to further strengthen our recommendations engine.
Great. So all of those recommendations are proprietary to Nosto. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's our own engine. We don't take anyone else's recommendations and spit them out. It's all built within Nosto.
Okay, fantastic. And I have one last question, and Bianca, this one is going to go to you. Are there any additional technologies or plugins outside of Magento and Nosto that you have really enjoyed using and found a lot of success with?
For personalized recommendation, or for overall, which one?
I think it's just a broader question, maybe around merchandising and e-commerce tools.
Let me think. Not really. I actually was thinking to adopt a third-party A/B test rule last year, and then Nosto released the A/B testing rule, which actually a better version for me. So I ended up not even use that a third-party one. I'm using Nosto to run a lot of A/B tests today.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you, Rory and Bianca, for taking the time and putting all of the work in, and the whole Nosto team to execute on the webinar today. And thank you to everybody who took time out of your day to join us live. You will be receiving a follow-up with some contact information for both Bianca and Rory, and follow up with those unanswered questions and a copy of the recording. So feel free, if something comes up afterwards, to respond back, and we'll make sure that those questions get addressed. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will be back next month for another episode of the series.
Thank you.
Thank you.